My guest this week is Charles Murray. Dr. Murray holds the F.A. Hayek Chair Emeritus in Cultural Studies at the American Enterprise Institute, and he's also a prolific author and conservative thinker. He's written books like Losing Ground, The Bell Curve, Coming Apart, and what we're going to be talking about today in particular, the book In Our Hands, A Plan to Replace the Welfare State. Dr. Charles Murray, thanks for being with us on Defending Ideas.
That's my pleasure. Looking forward to it.
I appreciate you lending your time and expertise to this discussion and your body of work for many, many years. I was telling you before we started recording that I read the book Losing Ground years ago, earlier on in my career, that really helped set the stage for some of the ways I think we need to reform the social safety net to be more truly upwardly mobile. So I want to thank you for the body of work you've offered to help those conversations happen as a nation. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, because your book, In Our Hands, we'll get into some details about it, but essentially you're providing this aspirational vision to totally replace the welfare system in this country for reasons that we'll get into. I wonder if I could ask you to start, when you look at the current social safety net in this country, what is wrong with it today that prompts you to think we need to think about wholesale replacement of the system?
Well, let's start with the fact that we're spending. I had to look up recent budget numbers because In Our Hands, the most recent version, was done 10 years ago. So a lot of my budget figures from them are out of date. But right now we're at about $4 trillion per year on social welfare spending, if you combine everything. $4 trillion. The purpose of all this is to make sure that people are not living in poverty and have comfortable lives in old age and medical care and so forth. And guess what? We still have millions of people who are not living comfortable lives in old age, and are not receiving adequate medical care and a variety of other problems. And the thought that occurs to me is only a government can spend money that inefficiently. And if you're talking about that kind of money, the proposition of let's just give them the cash has a certain intuitive plausibility. But let me give you three other reasons that have been becoming more apparent over the last decade. One is that we need to do something radical because of the budget deficits. I mean, this is not nearly as big a topic as it should be. We are looking at catastrophe, not 100 years down the road, but much sooner than that. With the budget deficits we're running, we will have no choice at some point but to do something about it. A second thing is that we have the increasing breakdown of working class families in America that was pretty bad when I was writing before, whether you're talking about single women with children, whether you're talking about able-bodied men out of the labor force. All of that's gotten worse in a variety of ways. And the third thing is what's coming down the pike with artificial intelligence. Now, I have all sorts of conservative and libertarian friends who tell me people have been saying this since the Luddites, that technology is going to displace jobs. Well, I got news for you. We are not talking about replacing strong backs with machines. We're talking about millions of jobs that are now done by people who have above average intelligence and college degrees. And the reason they got those jobs is because they can make judgments that are worth that money. And it's not very long now before AI will be making judgments every bit as good or better than the people who are making these salaries. We're not talking about a small segment of working class whose jobs are in jeopardy. We're talking about a big chunk of the middle class. So to put all those things together, we got to do something dramatic.
Is that why you kind of would lean towards sort of an aspirational wholesale replacement of the system rather than incremental reforms? And obviously, the way things kind of work in policy generally, of course, in Washington, D.C. as well, typically they're sort of small incremental reforms. You tinker here and there. Part of that's just political realities. But would you argue that incremental reform is not going to get us there because of these existential reasons you're outlining, that we do need to do something more robust?
Oh, come on. All we have to do is look at history. We have had crises in the welfare system of various sorts, especially funding of Social Security, going back decades now, and just look at the record of wimpy lack of courage on the part of presidents and Congresses in tackling any of these, so that, for example, entitlements are off the table, apparently during the Trump administration. Well, I got news for you that they may be off the table as far as he is concerned, but they are not off the table in terms of the problems that they are creating. Nick, I really think we can come back to this later. I really think that as long as we try to say, here's a path from A to Z, step by step that will work, we're kidding ourselves.
One of the things I want to ask you as well is when I look at this issue, and I will admit up front that I'm still a little bit skeptical of the actual universal basic income plan you propose, though it is incredibly compelling. So I'm excited to get into some of those details here shortly. But I look at these things in terms of how these programs affect people in poverty who desperately want out, who are hungry for earned success, to use an Arthur Brooks term, who they want to work, they're trying to work, but I think that the term you use in the book is voluntary poverty versus involuntary poverty, that folks who fall in the involuntary poverty category are those who are doing everything right. They're working, they're trying to earn more and earn their way out of poverty, but the nature of the system for some folks makes it really hard to do that at times. So I think about those families in particular, and I'm curious to your thoughts. When you look at the current safety net system, are there things that stand out to you that are harming or limiting the ability of these impoverished families to move up and out of poverty and achieve the American dream that help add motivation to you for why we need more robust reform?
Sure, they all boil down to the ways in which the current system encourages and sometimes forces people to behave like victims. And by that, I mean you get the assistance from the social welfare system if you can prove that your life is messed up, or that you've messed up, or that you are in some other way in a situation beyond your control. And what we know without a doubt is bureaucrats are very, very incompetent at providing the feedback to people with these problems that get them to change their behavior and do better. Let me give you a really simple example of what happens if you have a basic income that everybody knows is coming into our person's account every month electronically. And let's say that he's living with his girlfriend, he doesn't have a job, and he is living off her, but he goes home and says, well, honey, I look for work, but there's just these chump change jobs and they're demeaning and all that. And right now, she has no way to say to him, wait a minute, I happen to know that you've got X number of dollars hitting the bank account the first of the month. How about chipping in? If you give somebody an income stream, they acquire agency. They can be treated as a person who has some control over their lives. Or let's say this, a thing I often hear when I talk about the universal basic income is, oh, people will just drink it away or shoot it up their arms. Well, they're doing that right now, but you have a difference, which is, again, they can no longer say to their girlfriend, to their siblings, to their parents, to their friends, what can I do? What you can do is get your act together. We aren't going to let you starve this month. You've used up all of your income for this month, but you better stop doing this or we're going to cut you off. And if that doesn't work, you're going to end up having to go to the Salvation Army. I'm talking about establishing the only effective feedback loops we can ever hope for with people who are dysfunctional for reasons that they do, in fact, have some power over for. The only way we're going to establish those feedbacks is by giving people agency, and an income stream does that.
Charles, in a minute, we'll take a quick break. I want to come back. I want to get into the details of your book again, In Our Hands. We'll include links to where you can get the book in the show notes. Before we do that, I want to ask you, before we go to break, if we do nothing as a country, let's just say the current safety net system in all respects stays exactly the same, what happens in terms of the folks in need, in terms of impact on taxpayers and the country as a whole?
I mean, the temptation, Nick, is to say it's we're doomed. But let me be a little more specific than that. If we stay on this current system, don't change it at all, we better find some really huge sources of revenue that we don't have now because we are not going to be able to afford it. I mean, at some point, we're going to have to pay the piper. This debt you cannot keep accumulating debt as we have, and there will be some kind of crisis. That crisis could take many forms politically, but it can't go on forever. And we are looking down at the road at, if we don't take action now, probably a crisis which is some kind of revolution and unlikely to be a good one.
Thanks for watching that clip of Defending Ideas. For the full conversation, click the link in the description and make sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your shows.